Winter ran out of the party and luckily the last train hadn't left yet. Going straight to the first class, he was exhausted and had no energy to sit down anymore. First-class seats could be made into a bed by laying down chairs. Violet maid said, "Madam, I will wake you up when we reach the capital, till then take a rest." Then Hyle spoke, "What do you think happened? Why Madam Violet is at the police station." However, shortly after, Winter's face turned into a frown. He said with his hands pressing against his waist, and then in a trembling voice, he had severe back pain and his stomach had been hurting to the point of cold sweat. Felt like it's going to snap. Hyle and the maid hurried and get the painkiller. Meanwhile, Winter as usual cursed. "Damn it, can't we call the doctor?" Hyle brought a small bottle of medicine and said he picked Violet usual medicine, and Winter should calm down and take this. Winter again shouts in pain. "How am I supposed to calm down when I feel like I am about to die? And what kind of medicine it is?" "Seriously friends, it's so a funny scene, but isn't he overreacting?" "It's a painkiller," Hyle reply. Winter snitched the medicine envelope when Hyle couldn't answer correctly. On the outside of the bottle, it was written to eat in menstrual cramps, and the expected period was from tomorrow. Winter was annoyed and tried to throw it, but Hyle stopped him. "You have to eat one more," he said. Winter didn't want to take any medicine, but he couldn't stand it because he was in such pain that he wanted to take out the middle part of his body. Eventually, he agreed and took the pill and lay down again. Scene shifts. Finally, they arrived at the capital's train station. Violet, who was waiting at the police station, suddenly heard a voice. "My wife is more trouble than I thought. How many times do you plan for us to meet like this? Now this time you chose the police station of all places." "I didn't know you'd find me so soon. I had a lot of plans," Violet replied. Winter in an annoyed tone, "Is that all you have to say, after causing trouble and ending up in a police station in less than half a day?" Violet flinched and replied, "I didn't make an accident. Earlier at the train station, I came here to find an officer who only picked strangers and checked their identification at dawn. A police officer approached me with an identification check. Is that a common thing? I've never once had to do that before." "We usually do random tests at dawn, for security reasons," officers replied. "Oh, I see. Thank you for your hard work." I gave them Winter ID card, but those policemen had been giving me weird looks since the beginning, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. When they checked the ID card suddenly, they screamed, "Oh my God, Lord Winter Blooming, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you." "I'm so sorry." "Why are you so sorry?" The pale-faced officer ran away before Violet could finish speaking, and a young man passing by when Violet was puzzled said. Then a voice came. "You've been unlucky since dawn." When Violet wondered, the young man shrugged his shoulders. Then he continued and said, "Judging by your gray eyes, you're an outlander, aren't you? My father still gets his ID checked like this. He is also an outlander. Fortunately, I crossed the passing line and got black eyes and hair." Violet's face hardened when she realized the meaning of the word, passing line. With his explanation, it was silver hair and gray eyes that represented the Karnak clan, a stranger in the Lakeland. Winter inherited his father's black hair, and his mother's gray eyes. My husband had the power to make the policeman run away while turned white when he knew who he was, but he still did not cross the line of acceptance of his discriminatory appearance. Winter in an annoyed tone. "So you came here to find an officer who only picked strangers and checked their ID at dawn?" Violet replied, "I couldn't stand such discrimination." Winter clicked his tongue at her calm answer. He knew she was the right person, but he didn't know that she couldn't stand such injustice, but this topic had nothing to do with her. "But why are you sitting here?" Winter asked. Violet replied, that authorities told her to wait there because they were busy. Winter replied, "And you believe that those people thought that you get tired of waiting and then leave the place?" Winter shouts. Violet, "Wait, there is no need for you to get angry like this." They both touch each other and their bodies immediately return to their original condition. Violet suddenly stumbled in a sharp pain in her back. Winter grabbed her arm and sat down, saying, "I will take care of this, so get some rest, your body isn't in the best condition." Violet picked herself up. "I still have to meet those officers." Winter replied, "I told you there is no need." Violet gets angry and says, "No, I will talk to them." She entered into the room. Then all the officers who recognized her got up. The Capitol Police were a very conservative group, so even if the royal family was disbanded, the majority thought they were working for the royal family. They thought first Sir Winter and now Madame Violet too. They ask, "What's brought you here, Princess? I mean Madame Violet." Violet immediately found a police officer who checked her husband's identification card at dawn. Officer. The officer knew that she had come to look for him because he remembered he checked Winter Blooming's ID card. There were about 10 people in the detention center, only 2 of whom were handcuffed, and the 2 were the only strangers with gray eyes like her husband. Officer, who noticed anger in Violet's eyes, said urgently, "You don't know very well, but strangers are more likely to do dangerous things. Are the handcuffs especially for those who commit more dangerous crimes?" "Well, that's not true, but madam." "So what do you mean I don't know?" when Violet asked. The officer swallowed without realizing it. When he didn't answer, Violet continued, "Are all of their crimes being investigated just the same? If so, then treat them equally, and please be fair." But the police officer still tried to argue. "But madam, they are outlanders." But Violet cut his words and said, "How could you say that, while we are discussing equality? I'm certain you know what honor is. So please act dutifully as a police officer of La Crown." Her voice had a dignity that made him speechless despite her calmness. Officers replied, "We were short-sighted. I'll uncuff them all and treat them equally." When Violet greeted the officers, "Thank you for your understanding of my intentions. I expect you to act accordingly from now on." While saying this, she looks like the goddess of justice, isn't she? Violet was taken by Winter's hand to the Karnak Hotel. Winter forced Violet to lie down on her bed as if he had found a patient who had fled. "It doesn't hurt this much. I am not that ill that I must be placed on bed rest," Violet said to Winter. But Winter disagreed and said she should just listen to him and stop pushing her body unnecessarily and get some rest. Then he asked whether menstruation hurts this much when it hasn't even started, and he couldn't believe still she wanted to speak with police officer in this state. "It seems like you have a fever." Violet replies, "This level of pain is nothing." Winter's face darkened with Violet's answer. Then he muttered with a confused look, then asked, "Speaking of which, do you not have any friends in the South?" Violet is stunned. Then Winter continued, "I was at a party last night and no one was talking to me. How come you don't have a friend when my mother threw so many parties, but no one talked to me?" There was a bigger reason. His absence from any social event for the past 3 years was seen as a strong resentment against his wife, and the nobleman had too much to lose because Winter was friendly to the people who blamed her, though it was not only because the Warhouse turned away Violet, but also because the old Blooming couple explicitly hated her. Then why would nobles will friendly with Violet? Violet replied to Winter that it was nothing, so he didn't have to worry about it. Dude, how dumb he can be. This man clearly notices everyone looking down on her during the party. But Winter asks what she means, and is honest with him. She then replied, "Aren't you busy?" She then continued, he didn't have time to chat with her, and now she wouldn't whine any longer, and she was sorry about everything until now. He should leave her. He said if she insisted he would leave them. Violet thought as if he cared about anything till now. Now that the conversation is almost over, Winter said one last thing. "The next time you see a policeman like that when you're in a different state, kick him. My body can handle that." Violet flinched. She thought, she didn't know how it was going to be resolved, but she didn't think it was a legal method, so she squinted her eyes. Then Winter lifted her chin lightly with his fingertips and said, "I've never seen that look before." Violet puzzled. "What look?" "Well, you look a little angry." "I never knew you could also make such kind of expression," Winter replied. He kept looking into her beautiful blue eyes, but then Winter immediately took his hand off and turned his head on Violet's rounded eyes and slightly opened lips. "Forget it, never mind. I must have gone used to this small body. That now even small things are bothering me." Violet coldly replied, "I am sure you are busy, so you can go. You don't have to chase me out like that. I am already leaving. You should get some rest." Winter left the room. Outside the room, Hyle was already present. He started informing Winter about his hectic schedule. "President, I rescheduled the meeting that was interrupted the other day. We have to hurry as we're quite far from the headquarters. The meeting, we have to go over managing Hyle kept policies because your schedule was disrupted due to the body switch. We're having a sponsorship party in Cantus this year as well." While Hyle kept babbling, Winter thought, the first menstrual cramps he felt were terrible. And he felt so disgusted that he wanted to throw it at a random person and scream. He didn't know how his wife was holding this up. Hyle asks the president, "Are you even listening?" "Oh, I'm so busy. Yet I can't stop thinking about her, Winter." Hyle looked puzzled. Then Winter turned nervously on his way out to his wife's room and said to Hyle that he wanted to make sure that Violet fell asleep. Hyle should go ahead first. Hyle shouted, "Did you not listen to my report? We are on tight time, President." Winter opened the door and found Violet asleep on her medication. Winter sat on his knees beside the bed and stared at her. "Violet," she seemed to be sound asleep. Winter followed. "Don't be sick," he said, sweeping her hair behind her small ears with his fingertips. "Don't even think about getting a divorce, just live with me." After he finished speaking, he looked at his wife's face for a while and stood up. He felt itchy for some reason. So he rubbed his neck and grumbled, "Looking at your face, I can't go to work," he thought. The next day, Violet looked pleasantly out the sun-drenched window. Then a voice came. "Did you rest well, Madam Violet?" It was maid Lulu. Violet turned around in excitement after hearing Lulu's voice. Lulu was happy to see Violet again and serve her. She inquired about Violet's well-being because she had heard about Violet's fainting. "You seem now well, madam," Lulu said. "Wow, sometimes a stranger gives you more warmth than our close one. I love the Lulu maid. What about you, my dear viewers?" Violet replied, "Do I look good? Actually, I had a pretty good dream last time. I'm glad you rested well, madam. Do you plan on going to the Felice territory right after breakfast?" Violet replied, "Yes, that's right. Please prepare carriage and I'd like you to send me a message in private, without anyone knowing." Lulu was startled. "Without anyone knowing? What's the matter?" "Well, my friend ran away from home, and she shouldn't be caught by anyone." "Your friend ran away from home? Oh, what a troublemaker. Yes, I will do that too." Violet thanked Lulu and laughed cheerfully. After Sharon's now maid Lulu made our princess happy, she should stay with Lulu. After breakfast, Violet sent the telegram and went straight to her mother. After a 30-minute drive, Ella's residence in the Philippines came out. As Violet got out of the carriage, Mrs. Ella Philippe, Violet's mother and former Queen of Le Crown, came out to meet her with a bright face. "Violet, it has been a long time. Sorry I haven't been able to see you, Mother," Violet said while greeting her mother. Her mother said, "Now you are a blooming household, dear. I understand. Would you like to go in for a cup of tea? I managed to get some of Ash's favorite tea." Violet froze hearing her mother's words. Ella continued in a soft voice, "You're doing fine. So there's nothing to worry about. What should we do with our poor Ash? He can't even freely drink his favorite tea. You have no idea how much he struggles." Violet in a depressing tone, "I see, so Ash has a tough time." "Yes, he is having a tough time deceiving people and plotting against his little sister." She thought, "No, I can't keep her mentioning about Ash." Then she said, "I really wish to see the garden. How about we take a walk? There is something I like to discuss with you." Her mother asks, "What do you want to talk about?" Now the scene shifts to Winter's office. Next is regarding the sponsorship party. This year, it'll be hosted by Cantus once again. "Is this that place that gifted us wine as thanks for the donation?" Winter said Winter loved this wine, but no one can purchase it because monks don't sell it. They give it as a gift to their believer, and Winter was only interested in wine. "That's right, you were very much enamored by its president," Hyle said. Winter said the fragrance of the wine was exquisite. "I want our soon-to-be-finished hotel to have exclusive rights to that wine. I know, with my etiquette, there won't even be a negotiation. Most of the monks are of royal lineage after all. They do value reputation more than wealth. Well, that'll be quite tricky. I will try to make an appointment with them," Hyle said. Then Winter thought, of etiquette. He got an idea just from the word etiquette. He thought Violet knows how to switch the bodies right. Should I ask her to switch just for a one day? Well, viewers, I think this man really wants to destroy his house with his own hands. The scene shifts to Violet and her mother's garden. "Mother, I had a hard time," Violet said. Her mother asks, "Are you having a problem with Sir Winter?" Violet continued, "I don't know what to do this anymore. I don't know when my husband be home once he goes out. And all the southern aristocrats hate me. I'm really tired now. Her mother replied, but you're good on your own, till now. Violet bit her lips and continued with a quiet voice. I also have times when I find it difficult to deal with it, Mother. And that's why there's something I'd like to ask for you, Mother, if Winter and I get a divorce. Ella sighed as if she couldn't hear. She suddenly shouted, Violet, that isn't the right way. Marriage can be difficult, but divorce is never the answer. That's something you can't blame others when you can just do better. I know you will understand what I am trying to say. You are already doing so well on your own. Seeing her mother come out like this, Violet gets what her mother is actually worried about. Her reaction means if Violet leaves the blooming household, it will have a negative impact on Ash's influence in the kingdom. She thought, she understood, when Violet was 10 years old, her eldest brother passed away. Before that, Ella only knew her son, but after that, she became obsessed with her other children. Violet understood her mother because her older brother's early death was like splitting Ella's world in half. Ella continued as if she was heartbroken. Compared to you, Ash gave up his crown and has nothing left. I am quite worried about him. Violet thought, sometimes she also wanted to be a poor daughter of her mother. Seriously, what kind of psychopath are these moms, who are obsessed with their sons only? The scene shifts, and Violet returns to the hotel in disheartening condition. Fortunately, there is news waiting to make her feel better. It was a telegraphic call from her childhood friend Sharon. Finally, Violet's mood changed. An ask exciting from Maid. Maid reads the letter and Violet hears and gets even more excited. Sharon was staying at Orgel Garden, south of the capital, where the two often went to play when they were young. Violet left the hotel with Flip. When Violet arrived at the Orgel Garden, Sharon ran excitedly from afar. Violet. Sharon. Violet smiled. How long has it been? Sharon said. Wow, Sharon, you've grown up a lot, Violet replied while hugging. The garden was owned by Sharon's maternal grandmother, Anna Tessie Orgel. She came out and said, you must have been surprised that my granddaughter didn't grow up after a long time behaving the same, ma'am. Violet hesitated and said, please be less formal with me. Grandma replied, that would be improper, as you are also an adult now, madam. Grandma saw Violet's expression of regret while hearing her answer. Then Grandma continues, but if you insist, I guess I can't help it. Instead, call me Nana as you used to. Violet was relieved at her words and smiled. Yes, I will, Nana. Then all the ladies went inside the garden and sat and chit-chat. For Violet, who likes flowers, sightseeing at the flower garden was the happiest time. Although the garden was colored as the summer began, all the flowers would be gone. Violet knew what kind of flower tree it was without flowers too. Sharon said proudly to Nana, Violet really knows all the flowers. Nana, she knows the weeds, too. That's true, but I don't know why you're bragging, Nana said. I'm bragging about my friend. Is that so? Then she's also your pride, Nana replied. Violet became embarrassed. Please stop that, you are embarrassing me. Then, a maid came running frantically and interrupted their sweet talk. Ma'am, we're in trouble. There's a carriage with flowers for tomorrow's dinner, and I think there's a problem in it, and the flowers are dead while transporting. None of them can be used. Sharon speaks. Then how are we supposed to decorate the banquet then? The roses in the garden are not in season either. Nana said, that's indeed a problem. How can a garden banquet be without flowers? The flowerless dinner in the garden must be disappointing to the guests. Then Violet suggests, why don't you change the theme of the dinner to a summer garden? There are a lot of shell flowers blooming. It's so cute. I think it would be good to decorate the branches with green ribbons and put bluish grapes or green olives in transparent liquor like white wine to enjoy the summer night atmosphere. As expected of Violet. You have a good sense for these kind of things. Sharon excitedly said it was just a simple suggestion. Violet replied. Nana, who listened to Violet's excitement for a long time, said, is Lord Winter dead without you for a day? Then Violet smiled and shook her head. Nana got up from her seat. Why don't you spend the night here, Violet, and I will make sure to reward you handsomely if you help us in preparation for the banquet. If you help me. Violet got excited and agreed and said, please let me help you, and I always wanted to make my own money. Sharon also got excited and said, Grandmother, me too, I ran away from home and I don't have any money. Nana said the more helping hand had, the better it is. Since we're short on time, let's begin right away. Violet called Philippe. Philippe, I'm sorry, but could you inform my husband that I'm staying at the Oval Garden tonight? Violet shut her mouth as she was talking. When Winter never came home for 3 years, he never had informed Violet. He was always out of touch, and she always waited vaguely. Violet shook her head. There's a high possibility that he won't come in, so I don't think we need to leave a message. If my husband comes back to the hotel and asks, Lulu will contact me here. Yes, I think so, too. Philippe nodded eagerly. He probably noticed Violet's mind. Violet thought, I wish he would come to know how burdensome it is to endlessly wait. The scene shifts to the Winter Hotel. Hyle said, Wow, when you first asked me to buy the island, I thought you were out of your mind, after losing all your wealth from the marriage. Winter gets angry and asks Hyle why he is bringing this up again. Does he want to get a fire? I'm so excited. Didn't you manage to make it to the largest hotel chain on the continent? Are you returning to the hotel? Usually you staying at the office. Winter replied, My wife must be back at the hotel. Is it because of the divorce request? This isn't that much better since you're coming home at dawn. You should have returned earlier, President, Hyle said while teasing Winter. Winter got angry and said, You keep blabbering with that mouth of yours and see what happens. Hyle's response, You have worked hard, sir, please take a rest. Winter said only he can talk to me like that. The last 3 years have indeed been too much. As he continued to live a poor life of staying up for several days in a row and then sleeping for a solid day, he felt mentally exhausted. He thought, should he ask Violet to have lunch with him tomorrow since she didn't come out of her room before breakfast. The carriage ran along the river and soon arrived at the hotel. Maid Lulu informed Winter that Violet didn't return back. Winter gets shocked. What? She hasn't sent any messages. She must be having a great time with her friend. Maid Lulu replied happily. Winter asks, Are you telling me that Violet spends the night elsewhere without telling anyone? Part 4 of What It Means to Be You starts here. Thanks guys for waiting. Winter kept banging on Violet's room door. Madam, Violet really hasn't come back. Please stop or the door will break, the servant said. All servants tried to stop Winter. Winter shouts in anger. Now listen here. My wife is a woman that can't stand a crowd. Yet you're telling me that not only did she leave without a word, but she's also spending the night outside and she hasn't sent a message. You should have looked for her instead. You know how dangerous it is. All the servants tremble with fear, but Maid Lulu gets angry at Winter's childish behavior, so she shouts, She went to the Ogle Gardens. How could she be in any danger? She isn't a child, President. It was a nice day. Of course, she would go out. Besides, you don't even return home most of the days. Why are you causing such a fuss because Madam Violet hasn't returned home for one night? Finally, someone who actually scolded Winter for his behavior. We love Maid Lulu. There was nothing to argue with what Lulu, Winter thought, who didn't want to lose, was full of swear words up to his neck, but he couldn't say it because Violet liked Lulu so much, otherwise I would have, but then he stopped. Winter said in an annoyed tone, Violet doesn't even like tea parties. What I'm trying to say is that there's no way someone like her would be out partying all night. Pardon me, President. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Madam Violet loves being around people, Maid Lulu replied. Winter then continued, As someone who's been with her for 3 years, I think I'd know better. Anyway, report to me as soon as she's back. Winter sat in a drawing room chair and stared at the door. He thought, Ogle Gardens. I'm glad she hasn't left the capital, but he was still disturbed. Formed Violet words. Better than continuing to live like this. If I had died. Violet words. He thought, I wouldn't be this anxious if she hadn't said something like that. Let's just work. She's probably sleeping over because it became too late to come home. I'm sure she'll be back in the morning. She'll be back any time now. Let's work. As time went by, he thought she would come in the morning, lunch, maybe before dinner. However, when Violet did not come even in the evening, he was afraid that something had happened to her. Winter can't focus on work. It's been a whole day. Why is she still not back? You there, call a carriage and prepare to go out. I need to make sure she's safe with my eye. The scene shifts to garden, at Anna's house. As she was working late at night with Violet, they were making decorations for tomorrow while Sharon was fast asleep. I heard from Sharon the other day. Apparently, there's nothing Sir Winter doesn't know about you, Nana said. Violet bowed her head and thought, it wasn't the real Winter that she was with. Suddenly Nana said, is life in the South hard? Hearing these words, Violet get freeze. Then Violet replied, it's hard, but I imagine it's not as hard as my husband who lost his wealth marrying me. Maybe I am selfish like Ash said, I just have to endure this. Nana shook her head and in a serious tone she said, I'm sorry to say this about your brother, but Ash is an opportunist. There's no need to take to heart what someone like him told you. Anna shrugged her shoulders as Violet looked surprised. I am at an age where I do fear anything. But I am wary of people like your brother who seek power. I don't want my grandchildren or you to live in such a world. That's sad, but you are welcome to come here whenever you find things difficult. I'm at least capable of taking care of you. Anna's words made Violet's face bloom like a flower in summer. She gave a pleasant smile and said, I will, Nana. Ah, Nana is so amazing. The next evening at the dinner banquet at Ogle Gardens. All the guests finally arrived, and they were very surprised by all the banquet decorations. Oh my God, such a vibrant and green sight. It feels so refreshing to be here. What a splendid party, Madam, Nana proudly replied, to all the guests. This is all thanks to Madam Violet of the Blooming household. This luscious green banquet was her idea. Guests are surprised. Oh my! Did you mean the Blooming Duchy from the south? I see you have quite discerning eyes despite being so young. This atmosphere is unlike anything else. Violet hesitantly replied, thank you, she felt flattered. Then a voice came, she's had an eye for these things since she was a child. Violet was startled and turned around. She found a familiar face. It's been a while, Sir Kenjes. Kenjes is ex-commander of the Royal Bodyguards and current chief of police. I'm happy to meet your acquaintance again, Madam, Sir Kenjes replied. Violet said, I heard you became the chief of police after the royal family was annulled. Sir Kenjes continues. I apologize for not always being capable of protecting you. I heard that you visited the Welton police station recently. He bowed and said, as the police chief, I shall do my best. Nana from behind said, seeing your face assures me. I wondered why you accepted my invitation, so you could see Violet? Nana continued, so you wanted to see the princess much more than your dear old friend, my goodness. That's not it. It's just that as a servant of the public, private occasions like this are. Sir Kenjes replied. All right, I got it. You old man, Nana said. Suddenly in this happy moment, Violet gets lost in her thoughts. While laughing and chatting with people like this, the time I tried to take my own life feels like a long distant past. But sometimes it'll all come rushing back to me in an instant. She suddenly remembers the day she wanted to end her life with a gun. Are you all right, Madam? Sir Kenjes said. Of course, I'm perfectly fine, Violet replies. It's such a wonderful banquet, isn't it? She thought, I want to bury my worries and embrace this warmth instead, even if it's just for a moment. Tick-tock voice came and Violet noticed, it passed 10 meters already. She thought, I've never been out for such a long period of time. Then she shook her head and thought, don't feel guilty, Violet, it's only been a day and a half and he disappeared on our wedding day and only returned months later. Then a familiar voice came, I apologize for intruding without an invitation. Oh look who is it, Winter Blooming, Nana said. Violet was shocked and suddenly turned around and saw Winter. Why, for what he is here, she thought. Winter presented a wine bottle. This is a small gift for my sudden visit, he said to Nana. Nana replied happily, you didn't have to bring such fine wine. Violet asks, what's bring you here, seeing how you're dressed? I'm sure you had business. I didn't think I'd see you here. Winter lied and said, I was in the area, so I stopped by. Violet gets puzzled, all the way here, a place 2 hours away from the hotel. Why, is this somewhere I shouldn't have come? Winter asked. That's not what I want to say, Violet replied. Then Violet lowered her head, clenched her winter shirt and said, does this mean I have to go back now? I wanted to stay a bit longer as there are a lot of people I haven't seen in a while. Winter looked at her and replied, go and talk to them, I will wait for you here. Violet thought, is unlike him, is his business not urgent, then? Then she asked, would you like to come with me? This is our first time at a party together. Winter froze for a second, then he grabbed Violet's hand and escorted her properly and said, as your wish. Scene shifts, now Violet and Winter are in carriage. They are going back to hotel from banquet. Winter said, the wine wasn't that strong. How are you so drunk? Violet is days. She said it's strange but I get easily drunk off of red wine. Then she laughed. Then you shouldn't drink red wine anymore, Winter replied. Violet said, but you said it was a good wine. Even Madame Enna was very excited to have it. Violet's husband is always a welcomed guest at Enna's mansion. Violet said, how could I not you drink, when you brought such a fine gift? Why did you drink a whole glass while we were greeting people? Winter asked. Violet replied while giggling, it was so fragrant and delicious. Violet kept giggling. Winter said, you are quite drunk, aren't you? That's why you are giggling so much. Winter was led by Violet for the first time since his marriage and greeted dinner guests, and introducing her husband to people. She said, I always want to introduce you to everyone, this is my husband. It was nice to do it. Winter never imagined that his wife would be so happy because she only had one party with him, he said to Violet. Violet replied, that's because you're always so busy. I thought you might leave at any moment. I'm tired because I couldn't sleep well after preparing for the party yesterday, Violet said. Winter wrapped Violet's head to lean against his shoulder, then he said, how can you go 2 hours like this, just sleep? Violet's eyes were opened again by his actions. As his usual behavior continued, she suddenly woke up. Violet, who was hesitant, reached out carefully and held Winter's hand. Then she looked up and saw Winter. She said, Winter, let's really talk this time. Winter said, I can't divorce you. Violet replies, if we can't get a divorce, then let's talk about a child. She thought, I have decided to run away if I can't leave this world. But that's a final resort. If there is any single chance, then I wish we could stay married. As long as there's hope to keep this relationship, we need to move our main residence to the capital and have a child. I know you're still busy, but I thought it's about time to discuss this. What's your thought, Winter? Winter's hand slipped out before she could finish. He turned his head out of the carriage window as if to end this conversation. He said, I don't have any thought. Violet asked, what do you mean? Winter replied, I mean, I have no desire or thoughts for having a child. She said, is that all? Without even properly talk about it together. She turned to the opposite window without saying a word. I see. Now I know. And there was no more conversation in the carriage. Winter now understands what Violet said was a substitute for divorce. He was heartbroken because he knew, but he couldn't give room for the child. Well, it was impossible for him to have child with Violet because statistically, mixed-race members of the Karnak clan, who are mixed blood, they can conceive child with only opposite gender of the same Karnak clan, but he never explained this to Violet. Man, he is really very bad at communication. Next day, Violet woke up late in the morning. Winter and Violet having breakfast together. Violet asked, what do you want? Winter replied, what do you mean? Violet said, you were waiting for me first thing in the morning when I wake up. What are you doing here? Can't you understand? I'm giving you my time, Winter replied. Violet said, you even asked to have a meal together when I'm sure you have work to do. You must have a reason. Winter said, you've always wanted to talk, so I decided to hear what is it that you have to say so much about. Weren't we already done talking? There's a thing called timing in the world, Violet said. Winter replied, that's precisely why I'm trying my best now. Why are you being so difficult about this? Then the room filled with awkward silence. Winter then asked from Violet, how we are able to switch bodies. Violet replied, I am not sharing it, at least I should have something on my sleeves. Then Violet lowered her head and asked, why you hate the idea of having child so much? Winter said, I will tell you when you no longer want a divorce. I think I need to have a child to stop wanting a divorce, Violet replied. The room filled up with awkward silence and maids who were standing there were nervous. It seems like they are standing on needles. Actually, I've been curious about something. I wanted to ask you. Yeah, we're finally having some conversation now. However, Violet, who said she wanted to know something, remained silent for a long time. Winter said as if he was frustrated. So I'm like that to you, right? You bought it at a high price, but you can't use it. Winter get shocked hearing Violet's words. He asked, what did you just say? She thought, a mispurchase. When you brought it home, it didn't fit your house, so it looks like an antique in the warehouse which is bought at high price and can thrown away at any time. Then she continued, I know I cost 24 million lakhnas. Even I don't think you can throw it away easily, so I always felt sorry for you. What should I really do when I'm useless and still can't be abandoned? I am just sitting and collecting dust, so what I'm curious about is, when will you abandon me? I hope you find your love, too. Winter then speak, is that all you want to say? Violet reply, I am not down yet. But Winter interrupted and speaks, does princess don't under the meaning of colonialism, this conversation is going nowhere. Have no intention of abandoning you. And you must not leave me. I don't know what the problem is, but if you feel that way, I'll try to find a solution. What will you try to do? Violet asked. When asked by her still incooperative question, Winter said with his hands wrapped around his face to see if he was troubled. Winter then continued, if I knew that, would I have come all the way here? I can only solve it with money. I've been like that all my life. How much money do you have that you always settle everything with money? Violet asked. When she said something she didn't know, Winter lowered his hand, which he had held around his face, and looked at his wife as if he was full of energy. You're not interested in me at all, Winter said. It's not true, Violet replied. Don't be ridiculous. What's left of me if my fortune take away? Winter grumbled and grabbed Violet's hand and dragged her to the window. The high-rise windows clearly showed parts of the royal castle and even the island at the mouth of the Leckel River. Winter grabbed Violet's hand with his big hand, put his finger under her index finger, and drew a horizontal line in the center of the window, from here to over there. That's all mine. Violet paused and turned her head to see Winter. At that moment, the faces of the two were close, and Violet stepped back surprised. Winter grabbed Violet's hand tightly as she tried to get out of his hand. Violet thought Winter's gray eyes staring at her were like a sharp beast. He then continued, you might have misunderstood because I asked you to pay me back, but do you really think I'm doing this to get my money back? Violet replied, you get angry every time you see me. Winter then replied, what kind of fool will stay still if her wife asks for divorce? He managed to let go of Violet's hand from his grasp, then he turned around and left the room. He said, I can't speak as noble as you. If you didn't know anything about me either. Yes. I'll try to understand you if you want, so get used to me too, don't make me crazy, and you should also try to understand me. Then Violet asked, then how did you intend on understanding? Winter turned around, saw Violet and asked, does she has time tomorrow? Violet is surprised causes it's first time Winter asks something about Violet. She said excuse me. Then he replied, let's go on date. Winter sent flowers to the room for 2 days. Violet looked all the flowers sent by Winter and said, Lulu is definitely doing this out of anger, right? I think so, too. Lulu also looked puzzled and replied, it looked like that, but at the same time, it doesn't. Remembering Violet's words to buy flowers, it looks like a flower shop will be set up here. How did he even buy all these in just 2 days? There's enough to make a mountain of bouquets, Violet said. Lulu replied, the president's gift does seem excessive, but you also seem like you're enjoying yourself, madam. Violet said, although it was excessive, it was true that Violet really liked flowers. She was bewildered. Anyway, I heard you're going on a date today. Where are you going? I don't know any place, so I decided to follow where he goes often. Violet thought, it was not a date, but an agreement to find out a little bit about the other person, but there was no need to tell the whole story between the couple. I'll have my breakfast here, Violet said. The flowers smell wonderful. Yes, ma'am. I shall have them prepare something simple, Lulu said. While preparing for table for breakfast maid Lulu said, that fool Chef Turin, he got too excited over some rare butter. I'm sure he bought it for you as an excuse. There's no doubt about it since the president dislikes butter. Violet is surprised and asked, there are people who don't like butter? Lulu then continued, President doesn't like food with butter because he's a southerner. He prefer oil than butter in his food. President like vegetables much more than meat. It's because the Lord was a very poor person when he was a child, so he didn't have any access to meat. That's why he doesn't like dairy products. Listening to their conversation, Violet thought that as her husband said, she knew nothing about her husband as much as he did not know about her. Scene shifts. Winter took Violet to VIP box at Kyle Stadium. Violet, who saw the players warming up right below, screamed briefly in shock. All the players were undressing their tops. In the summer sun, the upper body muscles flashed like jewels. It was a completely different sport from a sport where Violet enjoys riding a free horse wearing a uniform from head to toe. Violet couldn't say anything and covered her face. Meanwhile, the staff in charge of the box seats brought an ice bucket full of beer bottles. Winter took out a beer bottle. Winter, you can take a look. I won't be jealous of you seeing another man's body. I know you won't. I don't want to see it, Violet said. Winter gave Violet a bottle of beer and asked to drink. Don't be so uptight. Drink this. Violet asked, do you just drink with a bottle? Yes, my princess, you can drink it as it is, Winter replies. She didn't hate this atmosphere as she thought. She was a little shocked when Winter put his 2 feet on the window frame. She thought, where is the man in a prestigious family in a decent suit that I've seen so far? And there's only a man who has no manners left like this. She thought that everything Winter has shown in front of me so far may have been fake. Then a familiar voice came. Oh, you're here today as well, Winter, so you are watching from here. Then she paused and said, Violet, you are here too. Ariella, Violet's cousin. She was startled watching Violet in stadium. Then she continued and asked, this is unusual. What are you doing here together? Winter replied, well, it's a date. She then continued, what kind of dating couple is that awkward? Anyway, Violet is a bit stiff and uptight. She was like that when she was young. It's exemplary and interesting for her. Why do not I? While Ariella was speaking, Winter held Violet's waist and sat her on a grid on his lap. Violet couldn't balance and put her hands on his shoulders, looking at Winter with surprise, and asked, what are you doing, Winter? Winter then replied, it doesn't look like a date. She know how to say that my wife is crazy. It's as much a miracle as your trashy team wins. Ariel paused and saw them, waved her hand and left. When she left, Winter sighed and leaned his head on Violet's shoulder. I can't be rude to her, do something about her. She is annoying as hell. I can't do anything because she's your cousin. Violet looked surprised at Winter's head leaning on her. Violet asked, you're really not close to Ellie, are you? Do we have to be close? Winter asked. Violet thought, I was half convinced that he was having an affair with Ariella, but it was ridiculous. Ariella tried to approach him unilaterally. Come to think of it, my cousin Ariella has always been interested in my things since she was young. Whatever it was, she wanted to have the same thing, and she wanted to have a better one. Then Ariella found one thing that was better than Violet, which was her freedom. No matter how much she liked ballet, Violet could not be a ballerina. And no matter how much she liked flowers, she could not be a gardener. Her position had always been to convey as the only royal daughter of the LeCrown family. Ariella may not know, but Violet was always jealous of her freedom and loveliness. She thought every man would choose free-spirit Ariella, not timid Violet. Violet said, now stop acting so brazenly, and let me down. She thought, though I'm embarrassed for showing something so uncouth, it honestly felt quite refreshing. She was about to get off his knees, but Winter grabbed her and didn't let her go. Rather, he wrapped his hands around her smooth legs and pulled her close to him. She looked at Winter as if he were doing something wrong. Let me get off, stop being rude, she said. Winter replied, I wonder how many times I'll be told I'm rude today. I won't do it anymore, Violet said. Then Winter continued and said, let's make a bet. What if you do it again? Okay, what's your bet? Violet asked. He replied, 3 more times. If you don't call out my behavior, I'll go to every party and from beginning to end I'll stay only next to you. Violet, replied liar. Winter said, why would I lie when I am being serious? I don't have anything to bet like that, Violet replied. Then Winter said, you're the only one who knows how to change. Sometimes there's a place where you need your etiquettes. I see, she replied. She thought, it's surprising that he needs a change of body. Violet still didn't have much lingering feelings about her life, and she thought it would be no problem if she died because she didn't change her body properly, so she nodded without much concern. Okay, fine, it doesn't sound bad. When do you need? Winter asked, really was that easy? Violet said, yes, it's easier than you think. How then, he asked. Violet said, if you need it, find out for yourself. Violet said so, and only then did she get away from Winter, who let go. When she sat next to him, Winter said what he really wanted. Then Winter had better idea. He said, you'll have to kiss me if you lose the bet. Violet said, it's more useful to change your body when you need it than to kiss me. Winter replied, you don't even need it that bad. Kiss me once until I'm satisfied. If you're careful, you'll win anyway. Whatever you bet on, it's your advantage. Violet thought about it. That's true. Let's make a bet. Then, Violet thought she would win anyway, and even if she lost, it was not difficult to face her lips for a while. In the meantime, the game began. From the beginning, the players of the 2 teams, who had taken off their tops, rushed at the same time. It was a competition with only strength. Violet thought this game is far more brutal than she thought, and whole audience are also using such uncouth words. She was about to say their behavior, but then she realized she had made bet with Winter. She was about to lose. At that time, A man with a large round barrel around his neck stopped in front of the window frame where the couple was watching the game. Lord, who are you betting on? Oh, my God, the man who recognized Violet sitting next to Winter. Then he said it loud, Princess Violet. What are you just standing there for? If you recognized her, you should get on your knees. Who do you think you're in front of? When Winter spoke with a serious expression, the man quickly knelt down. Surprised, Violet got up in a hurry and grabbed the man's arm and lifted it and said, That's not necessary. The royal family has been disbanded for 3 years, and even if not, my husband was just teasing you. At Violet's words, the man stood up feeling unfair and thrilled that the princess had held his arm. Then the man took off his hat and held it in his hand, crying at Winter. What a surprise, why are you making fun of me? Winter said, Who's to blame for your own stupidity? I'll bet on Dozer. When Winter took out the bills from his wallet, the man turned the large board he was carrying on his back to the front. Then under the player's name, Crack Dozer, the man wrote Winter's name and the amount of money he bet. Winter asked, Have you ever been to a horse race? Here, instead of the winning horse, people bet on the athlete that they think will draw the first blood from an opponent. This is all legal. You don't have to needlessly worry. Now then, who do y'all want to bet on, Princess? I'm sure whoever is chosen by you will consider it an eternal honor, the man said. Violet is shocked, she said. How can people bet on such a thing? You two are teasing me now, right? When Violet tried to refuse, Winter pointed to the players and said, Have you tried horse racing? Yes, 1 or 2 times following my father, she replied. Winter said, Just think all the players are horses. They're a person, Violet said. Then Winter continued, Just think it's a horse and choose it. Think you have a mare and look carefully like a stallion. Winter, how could you say such an uncouth thing? Violet, who had already said, uncouth, belatedly covered her mouth with her hands. However, one of the corners of Winter's mouth was going up, probably already heard her, and the man who was giggling at the word stallion flinching at the word, uncouth, and stopped laughing. Winter said, I'm sorry I won so easily. Violet replied, But what you just said was too much, please cancel it. He instant reply, Okay, I'll take back what I said then, purposely said that so you'd call me ill-mannered, now stop being angry and choose, or are you going to do nothing after coming all the way here? Winter said soothingly and chinned the stadium as if asking her to choose a player. Violet looked calmly and pointed to a player. She chose and said, That player looks like he's in good shape. Santer then, that's a good choice. Violet's name was written on the board. About 20 minutes later, the referee stopped the game when blood splashed from a punch at the stadium. It's Santer, someone shouted, and the audience began shouting Santer's name. It continued while Santer, who punched during the match, was sent off. Winter congratulated Violet for winning betting. The bloody stadium was shocking, but after learning the rules, Violet got interested little by little. She glanced at it in a similar mood like how she kept craving stimulating food, perhaps because she lived in a dark and quiet place like a mole for 3 years. All unfamiliar things were interesting. During the game, many people came to the box seat and greeted the two. Winter often bursted into laughter in the middle of the conversation, and Violet has never seen Winter smile like a boy in the past 3 years. She thought so Winter can smile like that. If I were dead, he'd be much more free. It was strange that Violet's body changed because of Winter's pedigree, but the result was not for him. Scene shifts. It was around 9 o'clock when the two returned to the hotel. Winter bought a bag of his favorite crawler donuts at a nearby night market. You're not eating this either, right? You must be a bit picky, Winter grumbled. Violet replied, It's not that it's not, but he bought fried fish for dinner at the stadium. That's why. Winter said, It's fine. You don't have to think about it. But I'm telling the truth, she replied. Is it your first time seeing a donut that looks like this? Winter asked. Yes, I've never tried it before, she replied. He then continued. It's just like how I dislike the fancy dishes of nobles. I get it, so you don't have to pretend otherwise for me. However, after seeing Winter eat a donut with his mouth wide open, she also opened her mouth wide. Violet mumbled while covering her mouth with her hands and said, Oh, my God, it's really delicious. It was quite different from the expression, it's delicious, as if a guest was praising the bad food at dinner, that she said while eating fried fish earlier. Violet said it's wonderful and, why are you laughing? Winter replied, because it's cute. She asked, who? There's only 2 of us here. Do you think I'm cute? Winter said while frowning. The word cute was so unfamiliar for her that Violet could not respond. Oh, I decided to kiss you in exchange. Shall we do it now? Violet got up from her seat. I came here with that in mind. That was why I've been sitting here with you. But, Winter said and kept staring Violet. Then he opened his mouth and said, I'm warning you. A playful kiss like last time is not going to cut it. Violet gets embraced. She then replied, playful? I've never done no such thing. Then he sit back and said, listen here. Your family's education is all wrong. You can't take off all your clothes, even in bed. You can't make any sound or even touch. Do you think those rules make any sense? He said while frowning. Then Violet asked, then what kind of kiss do you want? Is it not just touching lips together is called kiss? Winter replied, no, it's not. Only then did Winter get up from his seat when and held Violet's waist with both hands and sat on the table. Violet looked up at Winter with her head up. She said, don't sit on the table. Winter leaned over the table with his hand. As the faces of the two became somewhat closer, Winter stopped and glanced at her eyes. He replied, it's fine while kissing now you can kiss me. Violet leaned back little by little because she was nervous without realizing it. Then Winter held her waist tightly in one arm and pulled her close. Violet gazed gently at Winter's face, which became too close. Then he said, you asked me what I wanted, right? 3 years of holding back is enough. What is the kiss he wants? As soon as she thought, each other's lips touched. Even the way he kissed seemed to be completely different from her husband. Then maid Lulu knocked the door and said, Madam Violet, I'm here to prepare your bed. Hyle was also there. He said, President, it's time for you to head back to the office. But they got no response. Then Lulu called Violet name again, Madam Violet. Finally a fainted voice came. It was Winter. I will be there just a second. And as she was getting up, Winter hugged her waist and wouldn't let her go. His hair was completely disheveled, and his shirts were unbuttoned in the process of touching each other's. Violet said, what would Lulu think of us? Winter replied, you heard from Hyle that I worked as a servant when I was a kid, right? I'll clean up the bed. Violet said, we can't. What will the two of them think? Lulu and Hyle kept waiting outside the room. Hyle thought, could it be they? Then Winter continued, that the bed's going to be a real mess tomorrow. Violet asked, what does that mean? In the meantime, Violet, who had been agonizing for a while, tried to get out of his arms by understanding what he meant and freaked out. How can you say such things so boldly, Winter? Violet opened the door first and went out. The eyes of Lulu, who was waiting in front, and Hyle, who was standing behind her, trembled wildly. As Winter walked past those two without a word, Hyle was frozen and quickly followed him. My lord, you're going to the office right away, aren't you, in a hurry? Hyle said. Winter replied to Hyle, you want me to rest, then why are you here? Hyle replied, I told you because I thought you wouldn't rest if I didn't say so. I was wrong. Winter replied, fine. The prepared to leave now. Lulu, who was rolling her eyes until the two were far away, teased Violet. Madam, your hair is messy. Violet's face turned red with shame. Before leaving, Winter turned back and said, as for you, Violet, let me know if you have any party to attend. I will go with you, and there's no point in betting if you go all 3 times. Violet's eyes sparkled. She replied, really, even though I lost? Yeah, even though you lost, I'll go with broad generosity, Winter replied. Violet's eyes got round and nodded. She said, then, I bet often. Walking to every party to participate every time? Winter asked. Yes, I'd love to, she replied. Winter replied, just head back and take rest. Winter left the room. Maid Lulu again teased Violet. Oh, the fire isn't even on, but you don't know why the room is so hot. Do you want me to sneak both of you to the same room? Violet, whose face turned red with shame, she said, you don't have to do that at all, I'm telling you. Violet shook her head with a face that did not find any of her usual composure. Lulu kept teasing Violet with a cute new reaction. Then Lulu left the room with a pleased expression. Violet thought, it was a day full of unfamiliar things like the match, the bet, and the kiss which Winter desire. Although Winter kept going blizzard things, but I didn't dislike them. Violet, lying on the bed, stroked her lips with her hands. His ways were strange, but she didn't hate it. 4 days later, the couple packed their bags to return to the blooming mansion which was located in the south. Lulu and all servants was regretful and didn't know what to do, and after holding Violet tightly and letting go, she couldn't bear it and held her tightly and let her go again repeatedly. Lulu said, Madam Violet, you have to come back soon. Madam, please make sure you're eating properly. Head chef said. Leaving the capital behind, Violet got on the train. Seeing her expression begin to harden from the moment she left, Winter worriedly asked, "You guys aren't saying goodbye forever, you know?" Violet replied, "But it's true that we won't be seeing them for a while." He continued, "You must have taken quite a liking to the hotel staff. If you like them so much, why not bring them to the estate?" Violet asked, "What does he mean?" Winter replied, "If you want to stay with them, you can do exactly that, and of course, I'll make sure to compensate them fairly." Violet unintentionally shouts, "No," she thought, "bring them to the blooming estate, and let them see how awful and pathetic I am there. No, never." She then composed herself and said, "No, that's not necessary." Winter saw Violet's expression and asked, "You don't look better." Then again Violet thought, "I came to my senses, now I am going that place again." She then speak, "You know what I was thinking. Why don't we live in the capital? It's okay even if it's later, think about it. It's okay to live in the capital too. And if we stay in the capital, I'll change my body whenever you need it. And the company is also in the capital. What do you think?" Violet's voice became more and more desperate. She thought she can endure. If there was a hope that she could come to the capital someday, she could hold out there, but she had fears he thought that he would refuse immediately. But Winter replied, "Okay, let's do it." Violet's eyes widened as Winter responded. She said, "Really?" He replied, "There's no reason for me to travel this long distance like you said. It will be hard to move right away. The Blooming has been living in that estate for generations, so let's see." "Thank you," she replied. When she answered with a voice that sounded rather subdued because it didn't feel real, Winter asked vaguely, "Are you sure you're happy?" he inquired. "Yes, very happy," she replied. He said, "Then run around flapping. I can't tell if you're really happy." "I'm really happy," Violet responded. Winter replied, "I still don't know. I'll have to observe you to distinguish whether it's really good or not." Violet laughed a little aloud this time at his joking answer. Living in Blooming's mansion would be tolerable if there was a guarantee that she could return to the capital. It's not a sure thing, but the fact that it's a possibility made her feel like flying. Violet thought, maybe this life will be worth living if I settle down in the capital, where people I hold dear are, and where there's no one to ostracize me. The train heading to Blooming Estate stopped for a while. There was a problem with the track, so it was going to leave again in about 2 hours. The two went out of the station for a while and went around the area once. Plane continued between the capital and southern regions. Long Leawood, where they got off, was quite populated. In particular, agricultural products from nearby plains flocked here to form a market. So it was a place where a lot of money came and went. Violet looked at the Long Leawood Plains, which was colored with summer green. Just looking at it, time flew by. It was a beautiful place. She said to Winter, "I always wanted to say thank you." "What?" he asked. "Long Leawood Plain. You gave it to me as my private property." "Don't say useless things," Winter, whose hands were stuck in both pockets, grumbled. "After the wedding, I heard from Ash after you left, out of the 24 million Lochna, there was also money borrowed from the bank using that Long Leawood land as collateral, and yet, you provided me with my private property." He replied, "What is that? You want me to starve the princess?" As Winter acted like a rebellious teenager, Violet narrowed her eyes and spoke very seriously. "You also need to accept my gratitude sincerely. Please run around flapping." When Violet returned back what he said, he laughed without realizing it. "I'll take it." Before leaving, Violet smiled and looked back at the Long Leawood Plains. "Who knew that it was possible for us to share a normal conversation like this? I'm truly happy," she thought. Before leaving, Violet smiled and looked back at the Long Leawood Plains. Winter gave her 500 Kadashan-wide Long Leawood Plains as a fortune. Selling the land made 300,000 Lochna, and 200 Lochna used by Violet every month, even though they are still giving tenant farming through brokers. It was money that could never be saved, even if it wasn't enough money to live a simple life. Nevertheless, Violet never thought of selling that land even when she thought of running away. She thought, if we divorce, I have to return it. Winter is a man with a strong sense of responsibility towards his family. I knew this from the beginning, which is why despite how long he had been away from home, Violet loved Winter deeply, even during the long periods when Winter wasn't home. Not because he shared his fortune, but because she thought he was such a responsible man. If you want us to continue this story, then type Nana and Sharon. I think Princess should just leave everyone and stay with them. Bye my dear friends.